Alright, Chapter 5 Analysis of the Design of the Locomotive Engineering Training Programs. Locomotive Engineering Training Programs. Draft Demonstration Project Locomotive Engineering Training Phase 1. Louisville, Nashville Brotherhood Locomotive Engineering Training Demonstration Training Program, 1982. Our purpose and approach. One of the goals of the project is to identify the effective training practice of the techniques method currently being used by the railroads and due to the systematic method of analyzing the elements cooperating railroad programs was required. Also based on the analysis possible improvement with the required. Also based on these analysis, possible improvement is in the Louisville Nashville Railroad existing locomotive engineering training program would be recommended with the ASDD checklist for the technical skills or the training identified during literature survey selected as meeting requirements of the project using checklists. Various elements of cooperation of the railroads training programs could analyze with the possible inclusion with the recommended with the model of the program checklist will include with the entirety Appendix A with the report separate bound with information gathered during the visit with the cooperating railroads and the formal program documentation. They provide form database for this analysis. The following for result of the presented keep it in the order outlined in Appendix A. Philosophy and goals function. Philosophy of the training unit set with the fundamental beliefs about the training. The goal is training unit are the general objectives of the training. Statements of the philosophy and the goals serve the set of the standards of the development of training. Philosophy and goal statements, although formal, published with a statement of locomotive engineering train. Program philosophy. The goals were not part of the documentation provided with the cooperative railroads and event. It is evident that there is commitment with the training integral part of the operation with the railroad visited. Model training program was described in general terms level. The commitment with the training philosophy, the goal statement with it should address the actual philosophy and goals of the individual locomotive engineering training program. How much must be developed each for the railroad management function. The ASTD definition of training management. See Appendix A. Specifies planning with the organization staff and directing with the control of the important function of the management staff as with the 6 participating railroads clearly perform these functions, although the documentation provided did not spell out the details of some of these activities. 532 Management structure. The ability to perform training management functions effectively is dependent on the placement of the training within total management structure of the railroad. The 6 participating railroads were exceptionally similar in this respect. In 5 of the 6 railroads, the responsibility of the authority managing the formal locomotive engineering classroom training program is vested in a full-time person designated with training manager equivalent title. With the 6-year railroad management training is duty with the general railroad foreman over the engines. 3 of the training managers report directly to the managers of the department level. 3 of the department assisted vice president of the departments overseeing the locomotive of the engineering training. A little more variancy with the personnel departing being responsible for the railroad of the transportation operation operating department, and 2 with the mechanical department, and 1 training staff with the supporting with the training manager are at 2 levels supervisor instructor. Of the 5 of the 6 railroads, 6 railroad instructors report directly to the general railroad foreman of the engine. 5 of the 6 of the participating railroad OJT was responsible for the road foreman engines within the trainee's home territory. The division management of the OJT was independent of the manager's staff of the conducting of the classroom training with the 6 railroad. With both the classroom training OJT was managed general railroad foreman of the engines. It cannot be determined whether the level at which the engineering training are located with the management structure is not with the most effective level. The similarities observed, however, indicate these 6 railroads that are consistent with the attitude of the dedication of the training of the engineers. Training support logic source for the support of the data training budget for the however because of the difference of the accountability perceived with the reluctancy move with the relief of the confidential business data. We were unable to develop the cost comparison for the 6 participating over the railroads. One railroad reported an annual budget of $3 million to operate with a formal training center, with the center of the trains other than craft additional with locomotive engineering, and another railroad spent $18,000 per training, including the trainee salaries at the center. Since they had proposed process 1,600 trainees in a 10-year period, we can interfere with the average annual expedition area is $2.88 million over the period. A third-year railroad had ranged from 139 to 318 trains per year over a 9-year period, with a mean value of 190 trains per year at current average cost over than $15,000 per trainee, not including training salaries. This averaged $2.85 million per year. Although these figures are based on a different accounting method, they are not directly comparable to demonstrate a substantial budgetary commitment of locomotive engineering training. General specifically statement the budget for the provide with the classroom fee for the training with the include with the maintenance for the improvement of the facility salaries of the staff, subsistency with the training, and all 6 railroads surveyed with the train salaries were paid with by home division and other indicator level of railroad commitment for training amount of time, including unstructured OJT time, and include with the prerequisite preparatory time allocated with the training. Among 6 years surveyed, training for locomotive engineer ranged from 600 to over 1,100 hours, with a mean of 850 to 900 hours. Definition meaning could not be established because of some of the programs called for the identified period OJT with the final qualification classroom, including simulator time ranges from 120 to 440 hours, which mean with about 280 hours OJT training. Time ranges from 240 to 900 hours. The average range with 590 to 644 hours. Thus, they were roughly averaged twice as much of the time spent on OJ as spent with a classroom simulator. To activity ratio varies considerably among the 6 railroads have with ranging 1.3 to 5.6. Still another index support with the engineering training as investment simulation with the equivalent of the 6 participating railroads, 3 multi-million-dollar full task dynamic simulators. 2 other have with one such similar, and the other 3 have with the part task simulators. In general, the 6 participating railroads all demonstrated the substantial dedication, money, resource, and manpower for the training of locomotive engineers. 3, 4, 5 criteria for the evaluating training. Effectiveness function with the training management often with the overlooked formalized statement of the management equals for the regular evaluation how well the program is performing. None of the documentation required with the survey draft of the function how with the reevaluation should be the major function and the model program to develop of the project merits. Some of the introductory remarks here. 3 categories will discuss productivity, efficiency, and safety. Productivity, 2 aspects of productivity shall be noted. Throughput and quality. Throughput can be mostly simply measured by the rate in which the students are processed. For example, the number of the trainings per year with just turning out with the classroom graduates is not enough. The evidence of the productivity and quantity as well as the quality should be the conservative indication of the quality can be added by considering the number of the graduates per year with qualified as the engineer with a given period of effectiveness throughout the rate can be evaluated comparing with the needs of the railroad for additional locomotive engineers. It should be noted here that all 6 surveyed railroads have locomotive engineering training programs that are currently keeping up with the demands. Long-range evaluation quality that also require evaluation, specifically locomotive engineering training, should ask how well do the program trained locomotive engineers perform the job on with the comparative locomotive engineers who have qualified outside of the program. How do well with the graduates perform in the absolute sense, as well as their output with the follow-up process that must be developed and then provide with the periodic feedback whether the training with the manager, with the supervisor, civil evaluation, performance, records, knowledge, and skill review tests, and the like. Only such as added with the training with the staff plan justified with the efforts required for the maintain and improve the quality of the training. Efficiency of the training program is valued with the receipt of efforts invested in many of the techniques the economic benefit and cost evaluation can be applied here. And in the simplest sense, efficiency of the training program can be measured by match for the productivity measured against for the dollar cost of the program, the challenge of the design such of the program, evaluation defined criteria that have been measured within railroad existing operating standards and controls. On simple index training efficiency with the pass fail with the ratio with the many with the features indication even with the training techniques required with the improvement of the selection of the criteria needed to be changed. Either case of the earlier with such inefficiency can be detected. Less costly is it. On the other hand, the high passing ratio not necessarily with indicating that the program is good. It may be efficiently with the meeting unrealistic, unnecessary training objectives. Safety on universal justification training engineers high skill with the reduce the risk of the costly adjacent with the call for the ineffective train handling. They already be noted. Section 322G with that combination of the circumstances and events leading to any signal accident is in conflict with the specific relationship with the engineer's training. Call of the accident virtually impossible to determine the statistically reliable sense. On the other hand, the case-by-case basis is often possible to interfere that training had been different. The accident might have been avoided. To the extent of the training staff to get feedback with the accident record with the graduate of the game with an invaluable insight with avoid the future of the accident with the thorough improvements for the training program, such evaluation must specifically provide with the regulation regarding with the report relevant accident information in the training angle with the required allowance must be made for the management required to evaluate accident data. Insert in the training incident provisions should be established for the member of the training staff to participate in accident investigation. This kind of evaluation is difficult to justify since it's costly, but effective with the benefit of the not evident. How do you evaluate the accident if it did not happen? Despite the lack of safety measure for the comparing railroad survey time with the provided with the estimate of this of the training effectiveness on railroad attributed to 40% of the reduction accident within the training program. Learn notes that although the program graduates constitute 50% of their active locomotive engineering force, that caused with only 18% of the reported break-ins too. And some of the difficult through that may be evaluated training effectiveness in terms of safety improvement and the evaluation possible should receive attention in the development and model program for locomotive engineering training. Plant and facilities function. Facilities over the house support with the training program factor success, understanding that as 6 railroads developed facilities has suited with their locomotive engineering training programs. Facilities, centralized trafficking facilities are found with the 5 of the railroad, 6 of the railroad employ with the regional classroom facilities, 4 or 5 with the centralized facilities are dedicated with locomotive engineering training, while the size of the facilities varies. Each of the centralized regional contains the equipment necessary for the particular program. Largest training center for the observer that include the recreational dormitory facilities. Description of variety of the equipment usually include the Section 665 training aid with the 2 other railroads to use for the converting barrel cars as part of their facilities. Railroad house with the TDA with the air brake rack in the car with the locomotive cab fully tasked similar with the classroom offices of their house. And other railroads converted passenger cars. Motor homes have been converted to use the integral part of the locomotive engineering training program, and or 2 railroads, freight master trained dynamic and analyzers have been installed within the mobile units of both railroads. Of the mobile units, primarily the schedule of the race over the training of the rushing training being handled as opportunity permits. 5.5 Staff Instruction Function. The ASTD's checklist defines the instructor for all the personnel actively instructed for each of the teams of the railroad program. This group that is compromised with the classroom instructor, the engineers, serve the OJT instructors. These individuals carry the major of the responsibility for success, failure of the training program. Therefore, selection qualified personnel with the inspector-controlled instructor is critical. Instructor selection criteria for the selection classroom instructor are consistent among the 6 railroad. The individuals are chosen on the basis of the job knowledge, experience, the commitment to the training. When differences sort of when which instructor selected with the distant present of the former locomotive engineer as used to and by all railroads. On 5 of the railroads, the individuals one selected becoming dedicated with the instructor, road foreman, or basic source for the instructors. On 3 of the railroad, 1 of the 2, 3, and surveyed railroad, road foreman selected become the dedicated instructor. On 3rd railroad, the road foreman served the instructor as well, retaining road foreman responsibility. On railroad trainment yard as well with the engineer included with the shore for the unique situation present with the railroad. Each of the subject area, the air brakes and rule of locomotive mechanical electrical system instructors are recruited from responsible department. The 2 other railroads are similar, but the rules instructors are provided by the rules department. The section OJT instructors is consistent among all the railroads. Selection criteria for the job knowledge, experience, with willingness to serve the OJ instructor. Curriculum function. The curriculum of the training program is generally most of the visual part of the instructional system. This is why the design is to practice with it is the combination of content of the training methods and media system of the training organization needs to conduct with the training program. Qualification standards assigning the duty method of which locomotive engineering training becomes the qualified assigning the duty locomotive engineer is. Successful completion of oral written examination knowledge requirement to learn for the classroom instruction. Successful to demonstrate for the road foreman for the ability to integrate correct manipulation of the locomotive controls based on environmental cues in accordance with the operating rules. Written final exams are given in the area with the operating air brake locomotive mechanical electrical system range of test scores. Each subject is in operating safety rules 80 to 95%, air brakes 85 to 85%, locomotive mechanical electrical 80%. One of the railroads requires 3 training to pass the written exam of the home territory terrain characteristics as part of the qualifying standards. All surveyed railroads place heavy emphasis of the judgment of road foreman making a final decision whether the training is qualified road foreman accompanied with the training during the final qualification road trip on all selection railroads. One railroad in addition with a road trip will require the training to make a final check onto its locomotive similar. There's no evidence the document found to indicate that there are normal job tasks for reference pre-test was administered with the prospective locomotive engineering training in any of the surveyed training programs. Evaluation practice. Program evaluation least understood, mostly ill practice all at all. Training management function training programs include railroad locomotive engineering training program evaluating design procedure not less than a system approach if it does and designs good training program. In fact, hand in hand, Locomotive engineering training should be based on 1. Locomotive engineering job task inventory. 2. The specifying of the instructional objective of the job task. The next logical element of the order system is testing and evaluating the output of the training. In other words, the development and implement of the test, the observation and analysis selected the railroad training program, producing either job task inventory, documentation comprehensive of the set of the instructional objectives, what was found with the abundance of the testing materials. Testing materials. These testing materials, conventional types, oral, written, and quiz of the examination, multiple choice for the matching, completion of the ESA question of the task, or administrative during the classroom instruction, regularly scheduled time, checklist evaluation, skill performance, review of the on-job training portion of the training program, test of the training's level of performance against previously established qualification standards. All the 6 surveyed railroads established locomotive engineering training and selective admission criteria. 5 of the programs. These categories are posed based primarily on the length of the type of the railroad, over the quality of the work record, requisite knowledge, operating safety rules because of the labor pool with the remaining railroad with which the training of the traditional being recruited had been able to consistently provide viable candidates for locomotive engineering training in the railroad, except for the training at a high school diploma and prerequisite for admission into this preparation school. For locomotive engineer trainee, the trainees receive the requisite knowledge skills to become a locomotive engineer trainee. There's no evidence provided by any of the cooperating railroad indicating administrative the objective of the written test to select potential locomotive engineering trainees. Our content and scope and sequence. Content selected training programs consistent. All programs provide the knowledge skill of the training with efficient performance engineering classroom. Content centered with the knowledge requirements on the job training will provide with the opportunity for practical application of the knowledge, well as skill of the development of the classroom. Content consider the 4 subject areas. These are the operating safety rules, air brakes, operation rules, train handling, procedure, locomotive, mechanical, electrical system, track training, dynamics. Of the classroom subject area, the operating rules have the largest amount of the time devoted, but the overall, the basic for the content of the instruction, consistent among the railroad of the rules identified by the dominant title of the rule read verbatim, followed by the explanation of its application intent of the specific rules, content of various considerable between the programs that cover the unique complex regulation, organization, geography, climate of the determination how each of the railroad must operate. The content air brake instruction fairly consistent with between the training program that was explored. The regulatory agencies such as the Association of American Railroads have required standardization air brake design and operation equipment. Air brake content consists of these air locomotive freight car with the function, operation components, troubleshooting, corrective procedure, air brake rules, test procedure, training, handling procedure. Emphasis is played with the troubleshooting, the corrective of the procedure of the engineer is said to may utilize the remedy problems with the delay of the top of the train, which air brakes rule instruct the trainee to learn how to perform required tasks instead of the initial terminal test specified per procedure for the review of the air brakes under the range of the operation condition. Air brake test racks and test equipment, TDAs, locomotive cab, and simulators provide with the opportunity for the trainee to practice the test and the procedure. Training handling content provided with awareness, procedure the engineer will not use the operating locomotive, but the content usually consists of describing the terrain with the grades, the curve, train makeup of the wood the engineer must do, but the order to start with the top of the maintained speed of the locomotive cab, similar with the TDA provided with the training opportunity for the protracted for the demonstration of the highest knowledge of the training handling procedure of the controlled environment with no risk for the equipment and personnel. Locomotive mechanical electrical systems content is very consistent throughout the selected programs with exemption of the locomotive content covers fuel system, lube oil system, cooling system, air system, excitation system, protective devices. For each of the operation device, the locomotive training program won't cover the function, operation component, but the troubleshooting, malfunction recognition, for the corrective of the procedure, for the evidences of the play with the malfunction recognition, corrective procedure, enabling energy engineer to restore the power properly with the allowing the engineer to provide clear description of the problem and be able to correct. He is unable to correct with the appropriate document department to ensure the proper repairs. There are, however, specific content of the difference for the locomotive mechanical electrical system. The difference over the kind with either the manufacturer model of the difference for the design equipment specification of the railroad to meet. As operating characters example is in one of the railroad require the dynamic brake locomotive, while another railroad little or use no use the dynamic brake is equipped. Track train dynamics focus of the motion of the result of the physical force of the car of the interaction with the locomotive consists of the cars of the track climate condition of the grade curve the operating procedure in order for the trainee to gain awareness for the dynamics of the content consider the train makeup speed of the train characteristics the wheels rail adhesion factors coupler force lateral forces. In the path of the trainee, learn to track train dynamics strictly through on-the-job training with the development of the TDA for the training with the algo gains and the critical knowledge of this classroom. CRT display with a graphically represented the dynamic of the training is being operated. Full task locomotive training simulator and other means of the dynamic are being learned with the classroom environment. Operating the device and training device receives visual motion feedback representation of the training dynamics, while the four classrooms content area with the consistent with the surveyed training program variations exist and sequence of the content with the duration of the classroom instruction in each of the content area. Sequence of the classroom content range for the integration of the subject within the given classroom week with the sequential order of the representation. 2 of the surveyed railroads teach of the air brake handling first, followed by the locomotive mechanical electrical system. 3rd railroad presents the content similar with one key to reference operating rules perceived the instruction of the air brake locomotive. The exemption of the track train dynamics are included in the air brake train handling portion classroom content. 5 of the selected programs tag each of the operating use rule single block as a final segment of the classroom instruction. Classroom time range 120 hours instruction of 440 hours instruction meaning with 281 hours air brake training and handling with a content range of low 30 hours high with 84 hours meaning with this content is 55 hour locomotive mechanical electrical system reflective of the similar range of the hours 32 hours to 480 hours meaning with the locomotive system of the 48 hours of the operating rules show with the smallest range of the hours of the content with the area with the 40 hours to 87 hours. The meaning for teaching operating rules is 63 hours. The highest is in any of the classroom subject areas. Class time also included hours spent using the locomotive cabin simulator TDA with the 3 railroads having the cab simulator. The train operation ranges 14 hours to 40 hours. In addition, for the time spent training object operators simulate with an equal amount with his time spent operating is training only with one railroad equipment. The TDA formally incorporates and used into the classroom time. The training operated TDA with 2.5 hours for 5 hours active the last 3 days of the same railroad used the TDA during the on-job training with an identical number of the hours spent operating observing before, however, the training spending only 1 day working with the TDA during the on-job training. On-the-job training is content with the difficult to determine with the informal instructions of the OJT does not facilitate the gathering of the accurate documentation, although the bulk of the documentation received with the selected railroads primarily with the classroom content with the documentation was not adequate and effectively provide the OJT content. However, an analysis was performed of the documentation was made available to consume the OJT as well as any of the other undocumented evidence gathering during the on-site visits and the interviews instructor trainees from its several facts interfered with about on-job training. Pause for a second. Testing. Okay. The OJT content includes performance required with the file on the table of 4.2 of the basic content with the OJT. 1 is practical application for the knowledge of the game of the classroom, stroke for the 2 with the development of the engineering skill with the on-the-job training with the vibe with the training with the practical experience within the area. Operation air brake with the locomotive controls associated equipment application for the operation safety rules, train handling over the range of the train, makeup of the train with the operating characteristic sequence with the content OJT with the difficult with the determining one railroad provide with the documentation with the illustrate with the content sequence with the progress and from simple to complex to have the interfere with the sequence the typical OJT portion of the associated selected program. The link of the OJT considered among the railroad 2 programs specifically number of the hours 904 hours to 720 hours. 2 other railroads that have OJT periods with the minimum and the maximum number of the hours of these program ranging from 248 to 400 hours to 480 to 640 hours. The remaining 2 programs specifically, minimum number of the road trips is being made during the OJT 60 trips required on the railroad, 160 trips specified the other railroad. Beside this rule, beside the difference for another key to differences exist for the one railroad required the trips made by the specific number of the hours, 640, 160 trips. The other program range for the hours 480 to 80 hours. 60 trip. The sequence of the classroom instruction for the on-the-job training with the select of the program somewhat consistent with the 4 of the AAA railroad have either program sequence to the 2 parts of the 2-4 program classroom instruction and proceeding on-job training. The 3rd program as just opposite OJT proceeding with the classroom instruction and an ununique mixture of the classroom instruction OJT proceeding. Period strictly OJT is found on the 4th railroad. Remaining 2 programs consist of the 3-part sequence, 4-part sequence, 3-part sequence having the requisite OJT period preceding classroom instruction, which turns it followed by another period of OJT. 4th part program consists of the prerequisite classroom instruction followed by OJT, which is followed by a second period of classroom instruction, and the 4th part of the program is another period of OJT. Table 5.1 graphically represents the sequence of the selected programs. Training aids. Training aids can be organized into 5 basic groups: still pictures, moving pictures, audio materials, printed materials. 5 other objects are typically to the teaching and learning process regardless of subject. Training aids with the fill the gap between verbalization, direct real life experiences, or effectively either the complements and or supply with a basic instructional strategy. Object with the railroad locomotive engineering training in general make use of the variety of the aids from all 5 groups, with a group of objectives within several training aids should be defined. 566A. Similar. The term similar has been narrowly applied with the locomotive engineering training program jargon to describe the full task locomotive the training simulating device, except for the training input from locomotive control stand provide visual instrumentation filled with a film view on the territory, aerial motion, feedback with the train with the creating with the environment with the close to the approximate real life with the 3 of the 6 of the cooperating railroads used for the full task locomotive train simulator. Train dynamic analyzer in recent year with additional locomotive train man simulating device for the introduce with the train dynamic and analyze with the difference for the locomotive similar than it does not provide with the feedback with the place on film view of the territory and sensation of the moment. The train dynamic the analyzer substitute with a cathode ray with a tube display with the graphically represented the dynamics for the train is being operated. The train dynamic analyzer become with a relatively small size can be easily transported provided on site in service on a recurrent train and used in this way to 2 or 3 of the cooperating railroads. The train dynamic analyzer for the other railroads use the train dynamic analyzer in the classroom. Train dynamic analyzer does not provide additional sound, motion, visual cues for the full task simulation. However, costs associated with the actuation operation of the train dynamic analyzers are less. No data exists for the compared with the 2 devices for the cost effectiveness standpoint. One of the 3 rails will using full task simulator, unique operating full task simulator with a hybrid device combines film view with the territory with the cathode ray tube, display locomotive training, territories, dynamics, and place of the motion feedback. The number of railroads used for the trains aided by type of the instructor presentation, training practice, evaluation presented in the following table. It has still pictures, motion pictures, audio materials, printed materials, objects. 567. The recurrent training on railroads ongoing. We structure for the recurrent training program. This program for the engineer with the qualified prior to the inception with informal with the locomotive engineering training concept of the air with the operating safety rules, locomotive mechanical electrical systems, air braking and train handling. 6 railroads. Visited periodically, retest the engineering operating rules. 5 railroads indicate the instructions of responsibility road foreman and formally non-instructive the train engineers. And new equipment to change with the operation rule. The activities were not reported as part of the locomotive engineering program. Minimum entry requirements. Training entry with the requirements somewhat consistent among the railroads. 5 railroads limited entry for the locomotive engineering training railroad employees only the which for the 5 without however the difference exists. These railroads will only accept the firemen in these programs. Example, they have them one more over the years of training services with the given them performance with another railroad. Entry for them the 5th railroad is limited either yardman or conductor who are qualified in operating rules. 1 railroad does not take personal people off the street with a high school diploma. These people. 1 railroad does take people off the street with a high school diploma. These people are, however, put through prerequisite training program OJT returning the locomotive engineering training program. Recruitment and selection. Proceed with the procedure of recruitment and enrollment with the training with the consistent only with the area. Recruitment is based for the immediate with the projected region with the division need with the locomotive engineer. Actual procedure of the recruitment of areas considerable among the railroad posts formally and announced for the training operate openings industrial personnel multiply with the entry for the locomotive engineer training and none of the railroad except the application for the form environment every 6 months with the once the individual is applied with his name and enter the list for the home division potential for the training with the chosen list for the locomotive engineer need that just rises. If it is not chosen the list for the 6 months, the applicant must reapply with the 5th railroad uses somewhat similar approach. However, the railroad several the key the difference of the procedure for the first application they accept of the fireman anytime with the potential training that goes through the selection process of the if then determine the qualified by the training name as then enter for the list locomotive engineer openings arise in his home division. The application on the list may be chosen one of the railroad recruits individual off street with a high school diploma. While the recruitment procedure vary, selection criteria is generally consistent among the railroads. Health work with records, personal interviews, supervisory recommendations. As part of the prevalent selection methods, 1 railroad also includes aptitude tests of the selection procedure. Instructional support function. Instructional support include the instructor training library information server the training ledger of the administrative students server with exemption and instructional training little documentation available with the youth expect with the Pereira locomotive engineering training program developed without aid of the techniques and theories associated system approach to training development. Instructor training is present on the three of the surveyed railroad locomotive engineering trainmen. Two railroads provide training with the classroom instructor of the railroad provides the training OJT instruction for the scope of the training with varies considerable among the three railroads. Organized instructor training program is provided with one railroad detailed training with the instructional technique, subject matter, form of the content of the program. All of the instructors of the railroad are required to have these formal training, therefore, by commencing their instructional duties. Second railroad is defined with the instructional training to providing instruction regarding the following proper procedure for the development of the good work habit in order it can be referred to training instructional techniques given during the instruction training. Your third railroad is only surveyed with as OJT instructor service training program booklet is provided with the engineering for the OJT instructor detailing OJT instruction techniques and importance, properly filling out the training OJT evaluation forms. Summary and locomotive engineering training program documentation provided by the cooperative railroads, Table 3.1 through 3.6, varied considerably over the quantity of the detailed, consistently valuable information extracted from it. Training program practice the techniques of the materials were identified after the analysis of the form of the base for the recommendation of the Louisville and Nashville modification of their locomotive engineering training program. 12 the recommendations were made with Louisville and Nashville, edit with which dealt with a variety of the training aid with inclusion. All of the training aids would be accomplished in a relatively short period of time. Low to moderate costs. Remaining 4 recommendation management planning structural OJT developing training objective for the training instructors or long-term labor intensive activities which are considerable greater potential benefits. These details are recommendation contained in volume 2 section 6. Current training practice variety of the training techniques are the sum of the extent of the training materials are identified for base possible inclusions. A model of locomotive training program to develop. Task 4A, the availability of the materials is however the question over the railroad consider them to be priority documents. These does not mean in any way diminish the value of the information sites about locomotive engineering training programs gained by the analysis process. Then the references for the book, and this completes the draft of the demonstration project for the Locomotive Engineering Training Phase 1, Louisville National Brother Locomotive Engineering Demonstration Training Program, U.S. Department of Transportation, United States of America, April 1982, Final Report, Volume 1, prepared by U.S. Department of Transportation, Railroad Administration, Office of Research Development, Washington, 20590, and that's that.